So I think we should tell them a little bit about how the fort actually got saved. Don't you think?
Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Let's tell them. Well, hello there, Parapeeps, and welcome to another special edition of our Haunted Travels. I am your host, Sean Donnelly.
I'm your co-host, Marianne Donnelly.
Today, we are telling you about the man who saved Fort Zachary Taylor. But before we get into that, if you like paranormal, history, or forensic type videos, you're in the right spot. Right now, here's what you want to do, is go ahead and click that subscribe button and ring the bell, and you'll get notified the next time Panic D Videos puts out a new video.
That's right.
So the man who saved Fort Zachary Taylor. We've been covering the fort all this week. We've already put out a couple videos, and tomorrow we're going to go over the history of the fort in tomorrow's video. But tonight, we want to tell you a little bit about what we found, which is kind of cool and made this a very special video. Some of the history about a gentleman named Howard S. England. And I had reached out, somehow I found his son's email on a picture that was posted on Flickr. And I sent him an email, and I got some information back, which is pretty cool.
That is really cool. Love the fact that you were able to get in contact with his son.
Yeah, so his son's name is Edward England. So big thank you to him for sending us some information and making this even a better video. Now, there is a website out there called forttaylor.org, and it's dedicated to the legacy of Fort Zachary Taylor and specifically Howard England. So I put a link to that down in the description of this video. I also posted it out on our research thing on Patreon too. It's a very cool website, and actually, Edward
Sent it to you.
is the one that said, hey, check out our website, which is pretty cool stuff out there.
Yeah.
So let's get started with Howard.
All right.
The man who saved the fort.
Okay.
Now, those of you probably don't know this because you haven't saw the history about this yet, but the fort itself was actually just a storage dumping yard for the Navy.
Pretty much. It never did see any actual battle.
Well, it didn't see any action, and it changed hands from the Army to the Navy, and then the Navy just used it for storage and dumping ground, basically. And the story that we're going to tell you is how actually Mr. England, we'll refer to him as Mr. England, got involved and found some very cool information about the fort and saved it from probably being demolished, I would assume. So a little bit about Mr. England himself. He was born in 1914 and unfortunately passed away in 1999. He's responsible, I would say, wholeheartedly for saving the fort from the information that he discovered and dug up.
Right. I think that it would have probably just been left to eventually crumble if it wasn't for what they found, what he found.
That's right. He was born in Key West, Florida, and he was a civilian architect for the Navy. Now, Wikipedia says that the way this got started was he went out on his own to investigate the fort. In the article that his son sent me, it stated that he was tasked with the duty of going out and finding information about the fort. I believe the article over Wikipedia.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yeah. I'm going to assume that his son had a little bit to do with the article itself, and he of course has all the family history and so forth rather than Wikipedia.
So let's get into how the fort was actually saved. Okay, now the way this basically went down, in the fall of 1968 he was asked to do some research about the fort. Like you said, it never saw any military action, okay,
right,
but it did serve as part of the Army and the Navy. 1968, it basically was just sitting around, and they asked him, hey, can you just do a little bit of research about the fort and find out about some of the history? That was in the fall. December 21st of 1968, which is kind of an important date, and we a little bit messed up on this, okay, because this was scheduled to come out on December 21st, but with the holidays and
you wanted to do something a little bit more Christmassy.
Yeah, but with the 50th anniversary, okay, which the 21st marked the 50th anniversary. That's the first excavation that they did at the fort. They, meaning
Mr. England.
Mr. England and his team. And what he discovered in his research basically was true. That there was a lot of Civil War
relics,
armaments that was buried at the fort.
Right.
Okay. So it's for the next 8 years, Mr. England and his team, what they call them, the sandhogs.
Yes.
They labored at the fort, excavating and uncovering some of these cannons and stuff at the fort, which basically saved the fort from being demolished.
Right, because that eventually led to its being put on the national registers and things like that. But I can believe that it would have taken that long because he had a very small team. And I've been on archaeological digs, and I did 2 years just on a real small cemetery that is now a parking lot. This facility, this site is just huge. Mm-hmm. I am surprised it only took 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of that, let's talk about what they went through, okay? So, first of all, they went through 24 shovels.
Which again,
he did personally.
Does not surprise me at all.
24 shovels, over 1,000 5-gallon buckets, which were just thrown about there because it was just a storage yard, trash that they used. And they went through 50,000 cubic yards of rock and rubble that they dug through. Mm-hmm. That's pretty amazing. But what they ended up doing was uncovering 20 coastal artillery pieces, along with the carriages, the gun chassis, thousands rounds of ammunition. And throughout the years that he spent there at the fort, he met many Civil War historians that came down there, and they all basically told him it was the largest collection of Civil War era coastal cannons
anywhere that
was buried there on the grounds. That just based on his research and determination, they found all that and recovered all of it, mm-hmm. which is pretty cool.
Yeah, super cool, actually.
So why don't you cover a little bit, let's backtrack a little bit on how he got involved.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, he was native to Key West itself. And in fact, he was a pretty smart cookie. He ended up graduating as valedictorian of his class there at Key West High School in 1932. And then when the war broke out, World War II that is, he decided, I really want to be part of this. And he requested to be drafted as a photographer for the 6th Marine Corps Division.
That's right.
For this, he ends up going to Guadalcanal, he goes to Okinawa, gets into some pretty historic places at the time during the war that would later become historic. But after the war, he returns back home to Key West, marries his sweetheart, of course. But he does that. He ends up having 2 sons and a daughter, and he decides to pursue an architecture career. And so he does this, and he becomes an engineer for the Navy's Public Works Division. Eventually, though, he does reach the retirement age, and so he retires from civil service in 1972. But he continued working as a volunteer. That's right, he was unpaid, but he continued to volunteer with the Navy's permission. And following the name of the fort as a National Historic Site in 1971, he became the unofficial curator. So he was the curator for the fort and all of those artifacts that he helped to find and uncover. And then when it receives the National Landmark status in 1973, he served as the only known private individual ever to be entrusted with the care of such important property. But it makes sense. I mean, he found it.
That's right.
So it makes sense to me. Yeah. Well, when the state of Florida received the fort as property in 1976, it actually hired Mr. England as a laborer until he, of course, had the opportunity to attend Ranger Academy, and then, of course, in 1979 became the first permanent park ranger to be assigned to Fort Taylor.
Now, in 1984, he was forced to retire because of age. Mandatory
Sadness.
age of 70.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah, he was forced to retire. But he spent most of his adult life with the fort.
Right. Well, of course, as you said, a lot of his career was right there. And in fact, he created detailed engineering drawings. Remember, he was an architect of the armaments that he found there. And he built 20 different very highly detailed museum models as well of all of those things that he had found.
Those models also depicted the way the fort looked during the Civil War era.
That's right, yes. And then in 1983, just before that mandatory retirement, he was presented with the first ever Distinguished Service Medal for Park Service employees. And in 1999, it continues. He's actually named the Great Floridian by the Florida Department of State and the Florida League of Cities in recognition for all his tireless efforts right there at Fort Taylor.
So again, in reality, if it wasn't for all of his work and all of his effort and his dedication, I mean, again, this is another person that is one of our heroes, dedicated his life to that facility and saving that facility. And his dream was for it to become a national park for others to go and enjoy and learn about the history and things like that. And that happened.
It did.
It happened. He made it happen. And also there's like beaches there that you can go. And,
there's all kinds of things that you can do there now.
So it's a very, very cool location that we just kind of like
came upon
out of a whim.
Yeah.
Let's go down and check out. There's a fort down there. Let's go check that out.
That's right.
Glad we did.
It was on the map.
That's right. It was on the map.
we got a map when we got there and said, oh, look, there's a fort. Oh, look, there's this. Oh, look, there's this. And we're like, well, let's go see the fort.
All right. So before we end this video. Is there anything else you would like to add? Pretty much covered it all. There's one more thing I would like to mention.
Well, today, all of the items that he found aren't actually there.
No.
Some
Unfortunately
things are still on display. Some little things. They have some of the rooms in the fort kind of set up with some things that were found and things like that. But the majority of them have actually been moved to Tallahassee.
Yeah, and some of them are in East Martello Museum.
That's right,
we
the East
haven't talked
Martello. Mm-hmm.
That one's coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, because of hurricanes and things like that, they had to move them.
Yeah.
Safeguard that. Hopefully one day that organization though will be able to build a facility there to bring that stuff back to the location. That's one thing that they're working on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I will end it with this. Somebody asked him one time why he spent so much of his life and time dedicated to his work.
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, he had a family.
Yeah, he had a family.
Yeah.
And his response was quite simple. Someone had to do it. Someone had to do it.
And so he thought, why not himself?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, but someone had to do it.
Yeah. Well, we hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. Pretty cool stuff. Until next time.
Thanks for watching.
And happy hunting. Let us know if you like this video by hitting that thumbs up. Also, if you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, support our channel by hitting that subscribe button and dinging that bell so you get notified the next time there's a video from Panic D Videos.
Thanks for watching.
Happy hunting.